and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will have the roll call this time.
Mr. Alt?
Present.
Mr. Beistel?
Here.
Dr. Fike? Here. Mrs. Kaufman? Here. Mrs. Love? Here. Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Polakowski?
Here.
Mrs. Rhodes? Here. Mr. Bentz? Shelby Kahn? Morgan Sirianni?
Let the record show that Shelby and Morgan are both at a school event tonight.
Right, thank you. And 8 of us are present tonight. And so we'll move to citizen comments. And we have 3. We will begin with Dr. Fike has a few comments here for us regarding the wrestling tournaments and the inquiry.
Thank you. I do not have the opportunity to put this on the agenda, so I asked to speak during the citizens' comments. I got some phone calls, and the one that absolutely just shocked me was a woman who called me, and she said to me, just what is your problem? You know, why are you hassling this thing about the wrestling? She said, what are we talking about, a couple $100? And it was like she threw a bucket of cold water in my face. And I realized that even though we spoke about it, we never really gave any facts regarding the amount of money that was at issue. I have asked repeatedly who this group is, and I don't know who they are. I've tried to find out. But what I did find out some things, and I called people and asked around, and this is what I've been able to determine so that I can tell the taxpayers basically what's going on. This group set up this thing called a holiday tournament, and there were, I think, I was told there were 33 school districts. The first thing they did, from what I have learned, is they sent out, they get a request for registration fees, which I'm told were hundreds of dollars to register for this tournament. So they get this registration fee, and they put it in their pocket, and they keep it. Then I was told they charged an admission fee, and I was told $5 a person. Again, I don't know. They took the admissions with that in their pocket. They ran a concession stand, and whatever benefit they got, they put that in their pocket. And then we got a bill, or we had to pay, the Southmoreland School District, the taxpayers had to pay $3,522 for them to hold that event. Now, so the woman says to me, well, you know, I know we have a lot of money, you know, what's the problem? You know, we have a lot of money. Why do you care? And I explained to her, and I said that I would explain publicly, that since I've been on the board, and you hear it's all about the kids, we cut 75 students out of our German program. We cut the youngest students' snacks in our school district, kindergarten and first grade. We cut their snacks. What bothered me is that last week we saw a program about the primary center, and on 2 of the slides, whatever you want to call them, there were a little boy and a little girl. In front of them were open bags of Doritos. Apparently this is what's being sent in. And I know Jan Kiefer has repeatedly spoken to the healthy food, and that has been very poorly received. But I guess the one that bothered me the most was that last year, and Mr. Clara, is he here? Maybe you can help me. An entire class at our middle school could not take their traditional trip to Laurelville because they didn't have enough money. So I see our kids being cut, and then I see us paying $3,522 for 32 other districts to come in here. Now, one of the administrators complained that this policy was very confusing and very difficult to follow. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. When I came on the board in 2009, December of 2010, at the end of the year, we got a report, and it showed us how much money we had spent for anybody to come in here, use our facilities. Everything was free, everything, the big giveaway. That amount of money was $20,501. At that point, I worked with Mr. Botonic, and we did this policy, which apparently, at least my understanding, is not any good, but that's okay. 1 year later, that amount had dropped to $9,300 in just 1 year.
Dr. Fike, could I just we're trying to keep this to 5 minutes. Could you conclude, and then you are a board member. You're certainly later in the meeting if you want to pick this up and say some more. Go right ahead. Do you mind that, just giving your conclusion?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And if you have something more, you are a board member, and we'll certainly welcome any further comment. Another one here is National Honor Society, Teens for Genes. Janie Lehman and some of the National Honor Society students come forward.
NJHS would like to give you an update on our Teens for Genes collection. As of 5 p.m. today, we have 3,064 genes, and by tomorrow, we should have another 1,000. We would like to thank all students, teachers, administrators, the community, the school board, and our largest donor, Cintas Corporation, for their support. There is no way we could have collected this amount of genes without such a team effort. It has been remarkable what we can do together. We especially thank Mrs. Lehman, Mr. and Mrs. Love, Jane Loffer, and Mr. Birdie for their tireless efforts to get our last 2,500 pairs of jeans, and we'll update you on Monday as to our final count. We plan to deliver the jeans Sunday to their Apostle store at Westmoreland Mall. I don't think they know what's coming. Thank you again, everyone, and remember, it's not too late to donate.
Brittany, I want to just thank you for that. And I saw your presentation that you had online, your PowerPoint that you guys did. That was wonderful. So good job with that as well.
Thank you.
This group was featured on WTAE News earlier in the week.
Oh, yeah?
And if you look at Southmoreland's homepage, there is a YouTube video of some of the work that they've done as well.
Good work. Thank you. Jan Kiefer has a few comments for us.
I'd like to speak at the end of the meeting, please.
We have, is there a place, is there an agenda at the end of the meeting?
Yes, there is.
Okay, then thank you. We will plan for that. Let us move then to the approval of minutes.
It's recommended that the board approve the minutes of the January 5th and January 12th, 2012 meetings. Then those minutes were amended from the minutes that you received at the planning session.
So moved.
Ms. Kaufman makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that you, Jason? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mr. Beistel. Mr. Beistel seconds it. A voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries. Business and finance. So let's move to that, to the fund accounts.
It is recommended that the board approve the revenue report, and I will insert the treasurer's report here as well, expenditure report, bills payable, and accounts payable for January 2012.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Rhodes. Second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Love. And we'll call for the roll call.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes. Passes 8-0, and 0, one absent. And we move to the 2005 bond issue, and I think our superintendent here will introduce
I'd like
Tom
to
Kinney. Go
introduce
ahead.
Tom Kinney. Tom is our investment banker. I spoke with Tom on the telephone, I believe it was Tuesday morning, and he spoke to me about an opportunity to refinance a bond that was taken by the district in 2005. With the interest rates as they are today, it's a very good time for us to consider refunding or refinancing that bond. So Tom, I'll let you take the podium and explain what's going on here.
One, we do have a lot of new board members. Actually, I mentioned this to introduce myself to you, but there's a booklet here that will introduce you, generally speaking, to our company, Bank of Jaffrey. This, I'm not going to do it this anymore tonight because I'm kind of excited to see what the financial bottom line is. This will give you some background on Piper Jaffray and municipal bonds in a general way. So here tonight, your leader, Stephen, maybe that'll help read that. The other folder inside, you'll find a handout, Southmoreland School District Public Finance. That plastic vertical layer thing. It's kind of a harder cover. This will outline the refunding proposal that we have discussed with administration, with Mr. Platonic, with the district's bond council, Eckert Seaman. And there's one thing about refundings, typically they come pretty fast, they go pretty fast, the market's volatile, so we did call this to the district's attention as soon as it was really something that should be developed, and hopefully I can answer all of your questions, any questions tonight in regards to how these things work and switch right there. Hello? Can you hear me?
Can you hear out there? Okay. So it's not on. Raise your hand when you hear the mic.
Hello?
I think it's on.
Maybe I can hold the one on this thing.
There you
Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Tim,
Hello?
give him this one. Just put that on the podium.
That works.
Yeah.
Hello? Hello? What? Hello? Oh, this thing? Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, back to this. On the first page, and please, can't hear me, right? Is that good or not? Okay, cool. Thank you. On the first page, what we are looking at is the 2005 bonds, and the reason we're looking at those 2005 bonds is, as you can see, the interest rates go out to a 5%. And if you turn, I'll get us a little backwards here. If you turn to page 8, you're going to see a historic picture of the bond buyers index. That's kind of a Dow Jones index of the municipal bond business. And way out here on the far right, you'll see 360. 360 gets me excited because I've been doing this stuff for about 35 years, and that's the lowest number that I've ever seen on this chart in my entire career. And the Fed, if you'll recall, said that they're going to hold to these low rates, and that's good news for anyone that has outstanding debt, as does the district. And just as people have been refinancing mortgages, so too does the district have the same type of opportunity. Just to kind of put it in perspective, many of you have probably at least investigated mortgage refinancing or been through it. This is very similar to that type of experience. We are going to address refunding the bonds shown on page 1. This is not the entire 2005 bond issue. Rather, it is the most burdensome, so to speak. They have the highest interest rates and there's more bonds. So we're going to pick those off first. And in order to do that, we're going to issue a bond issue in the amount of $10 million, because if you're at 10 million or less on these refunding bonds, we get the lowest possible interest rates in the marketplace. If we were to issue, and that's classified, it has a name, non-bank qualified bonds. I don't want to burden you with all these technicalities, but the lowest rates in the marketplace accrue to bonds at the 10 million level or less. If we go over 10 million, then we're going to have to pay a higher interest rate on these refunding bonds, and then that spread, that differential, today's rates versus the outstanding rates, would narrow some. So we're going to pick off $10 million worth of bonds at the best available interest rates in the market and generate some pretty impressive savings for the school district. Now these are the bonds that we're refunding out of 2005. We also intend, operating on the same theory, to come back and pick up the remaining bonds after the first of the year, because this 10 million stuff is a calendar year. So come next November or so, I'll be standing here and we'll be sitting there talking about the same, hopefully, market permitting. We'll be in the same place, same time, talking about the same type of transaction to save even more money on the bonds that we're not doing with this refunding. So hopefully, is everyone comfortable so far with where we're headed? Okay, the page 2 are the bonds that are remaining outstanding. These are the ones that we'll look at come November. You can see there's another significant piece there. Once we get rid of the higher rated bonds, or the higher interest rate bearing bonds, you can see those, we're getting those 5% out of there. Page 3 is the mechanism whereby, is the structure of the bond issue itself that we're contemplating. It would, as I said, have 10 million principal amount, looking at that sources and uses. Net original issue discount, OID in the business, is just money that is exchanged between traders and buyers. It's an incentive to get the lowest possible interest rates. It has nothing to do with our firm. We don't keep this. It's a pass-through to potential buyers. It may or may not come into play, but in today's market, again, today's market is all we have to deal with, so everything that we're talking about tonight is subject to change, because we're not really in the market yet with this. We have a lot of work to do to get to the market, but this is what things would look like if tonight we were locking in this transaction. We're going to be, for about the next 3-4 weeks, we're going to be at market risk. We're going to have some exposure because that's the time that we put this together and go out for real. This is the time that you guys say, Tom, yes, we want to pull the trigger on this because it's a good deal, so get to work and do all the documents and get the bond counsel and Mr. Patonic all working together with you and get us to that door to the marketplace. So anyway, as of today, this is what it would look like. Going down to the uses, you can see the big number is the $9,279,000. That's the money that is required to pay off those bonds that we picked off on page 1. Those 4 maturities out there at 5%. That $9,279,000 is going to be enough to pay off in principal and interest those bonds as of the call date in April of 2015. That money's going to be in the bank, invested in state and local government series bonds. That's SLGS. That's what that stands for. We call them slugs. But that's where this money's going to go. It will sit in what we call an escrow fund, and as these bonds that are being refunded, those old 2005s, as they come due, and as soon as they're callable, we'll take that money out and pay them off. And they won't be your concern anymore as of closing of this issue, because there will be money in the bank representative of that obligation that's been there since 2005. The next 67.9, that reference to bond insurance, we will probably end up using bond insurance. It gets us a AA credit rating, which again accesses the highest, the best possible rates. Bond insurance before our financial crisis, by the way, used to get us a AAA. Now it's down to the AA level. But it may or may not be worth buying. We have no stake in it. We don't want to buy it if we don't have to, but probably, and in today's market, buying a bond insurance policy that guarantees in the event of default that this insurance would pay investors in the bonds, that's technically what it's for. What it practically is for us to get access the lowest possible rates for you, because the bonds would be higher rated than they would be if we went on our own. But that differential changes from time to time. When we're at the point we're going to market, we'll be talking to investors and we'll see how good we can get on our own rating. We're at least an A rated. If we happen to get a AA or an A+, the spread between that rating and this insured rating may not justify us paying that $67,000, and if it doesn't, we sure aren't going to do it. But right now, the appropriate thing to do is to show you all the possible costs, and it's probable that we will have insurance. We've gotten bond insurance for the last probably half dozen issues that the district's done. But again, things have changed a little bit. We were getting a AAA then, so we'll play this one by ear up until we go to market. I suspect we will get it, but
That's $67,000 for
it's a premium.
1 year?
No, well, it's a one-time premium for the life of the issue. If anything happens, they'll step in. But you know, we'll see. It's real simple math. Whichever you run it with the insurance premium, just as we did here, and you run it without, except with a little bit higher rate, and whichever one has the lowest debt service is the one you go. It's really that simple. And it'll tell us what to do.
Banks got bailed out, we got sold out. This is the Occupy message. Tell them about your fees.
You can see the fees right there. Those are fees.
Mr. Keeper, let's keep on going here with the meeting.
Sure.
We're going to take more questions. You'll have an opportunity.
The fees are right there, and that covers our fee, bond counsel fee, printing of the bonds, the bank. We have to get a bank paying agent bank to pay the bondholders. These are all the anticipated fees listed there with the bond insurance premium. Then the good news, very bottom with the asterisk. That's what we expect to save. Now that is going to be a moving target. You can see it's pretty exciting actually. In the industry, just to put it into perspective, you see 8.47% savings of the refunded bonds. In the refunding business, if you have 2%, that's something you should pull the trigger. That's something that you should jump on and do. That's kind of the break point where anyone in my position or in school finance would say, yes, school district, it's worthwhile pursuing. You should take advantage of this opportunity. We're at four times that. We're 8.47% is what that savings number represents. Now I'm sure I'm not going to be in front of you at the real bond purchase in a few weeks with that exact same number. It ain't going to happen. But what we're hoping is that it's really darn close, because again, between now and then we are subject to market. Rates are going to bounce, they're going to go up and down. They probably changed a little bit since this was run, and that was today at 139 according to the bottom of this page. But tomorrow when we wake up in the morning and we ran this, there'll probably be a little bit of change. But nothing catastrophic. If we're around that neighborhood, with 8.47% versus a 2% industry standard, we're in good shape. We're going to have a real good, viable situation here to save good money. Page four is what the refunding bond issue would look like. You can see, because we had a original issue discount out there that I mentioned of the $9,000, when you add that in, the yield of the bonds is 0.5 out to 3.02. They'll have coupons out there going from 2% to 3%. You can see those graduated scales. But, and this is reflective again of what's out there in the market. We are hoping, as indicated at the middle of the page there, we're hoping to be in a position, it takes some time, we got to create an official statement, we got to get ratings, we got to go through this insurance analysis. It's going to take a few weeks, couple weeks to get us into a position to go into the market. The bond counsel, David Tonic, has documents to put together, and I'm hoping that we will be in a position to have this transaction done by about April 1st, as you see here. That I think could be considered an outside date, but I hope to be able to move quicker than that. And we have a great file on the district. It'll just be a matter of Bill and his staff kind of filling in, updating the last official statement. We'll redline it, and they'll just bring those things up to date, and it should move really pretty quickly and expeditiously. So I'm hoping we beat that April number by a couple weeks. Page 5 is just another picture of the new bonds, of what it would look like. And page 6 is important because this is the proof that we did not extend debt. There's nothing weird, no mirrors happening here. Your existing debt service is not going to change. You're going to stay exactly where you are, and this proves that that's correct, that your debt service remains the same. It's just that we're able to replace those old bonds with these new ones and end up with that savings sitting on the table. That's how these things work. But we did not, we didn't extend the debt. We didn't do any of that kind of stuff. That would have obviously made it look a little different, maybe a little better. But we're not We're not doing that. We're staying exactly where we are, replacing those bonds, and we're going to be $500,000 to the good. And that's really a good thing. Page 7 is what your existing, this is what your debt structure will look like once this financing is done. When this is all completed and the savings is in the bank, this is where you'd be subsequent to that time. And actually I hope between now and November, when we can do this again and save you more money, and we would effectively totally get rid of that 2005 column there. But this is what you can see. Your debt's very level. You can see where it is in the far right. The proposed is, as we just approved, within a couple thousand of where it is today. You'd see the new bonds of 2012 are there, the 2008As, which we feel that we might address next year also, in 2008, and what remains for sure will be going after these 2005s first of the year. I know that I did some semi-complicated stuff pretty fast here, and I'd certainly appreciate any questions that the board may have, because I did go pretty fast, and I don't want you to have any questions. So.
Let's get the board into this question, and then we have a motion that our solicitor...
Yeah, David Petonic did do a motion.
But why don't we just open it here for any questions that anyone has?
Yes.
On page 4, when you talk about the yield on these bonds, that's guaranteed, right?
No, I can't. I'm legally not allowed to make any guarantees on this. This is subject to market. As I said, this is what it would look like if we did it today. But since we're not doing a bond purchase, I'm not buying bonds from you guys tonight because the bonds don't exist yet. We have a couple weeks for Mr. Petonic and bond counsel to put these bonds together and to get a bond rating, and for us to actually go to market and try to establish where the rates should be. But right now, all of these numbers are hypothetical to the point that if we were doing it right now today, this is the deal I'd be buying. But we're not buying bonds tonight because we're not in a position to. We needed to go through this exercise and be given our marching orders to go get these savings before we could lock anything in. The bond purchase, it'll look exactly like this, except for then it will be, next time we're looking at a package like this, it'll be for real. You'll lock it in, and you'll lock in the savings, and a month from that night, we'll have a closing, and the money will be in the bank for you. But that's the process. That's how long it takes. You won't have the money. There won't be money in the bank for let's say 6 weeks, probably, because it takes time after I buy the bonds for it's like a real estate for the closing to happen, and we need 21 days for Harrisburg to approve it, Department of Ed.
Is there any way we can pay off this mortgage faster?
Well, we kind of are. No, we don't. When we refund, we're taking savings. We could, it wouldn't be, for an issue this size, this kind of savings applied to the end of the deal wouldn't represent very much to you. You probably might not even notice it, but you will notice $500,000 in the bank for capital projects now. No, the answer, I guess, the bottom line answer to your question is we don't have enough money to pay the bonds off. I guess that's the hard, cold answer to that is we can't afford to do that.
And this is just a projected...
Yes, that's all we can. That's all we're able to do at this point. But you can see it's really.
What happens if it gets worse?
Oh, we might lose a little money, but like I said, we're at 8.47% savings, and 2% is a good refunding. So you're way ahead of the game if it lost half. And of course, I'm not trying to be cavalier at all, but we would want to do this if we went down to 4. If we lost half the savings, it's still a refunding and a savings that we should do, because if it goes away, it's probably not going to come back.
Tom, just to clarify, the
Yes.
yield on page 4 is not guaranteed tonight.
No.
But when this deal is consummated, it will be a guarantee.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
So 4 or 5 weeks down the road,
Yeah.
whenever that happens, then it will be locked in for the life of the issue.
Absolutely, yeah, and it'll look just like this. The bond buy will be a package just like this, except at that point, we'll have sold some of the interest rates will be real. I mean, they'll be of that day. Bonds will have been committed on it. I will have pinned down all the costs. Right now, we had to estimate some costs. Like, I don't really know, except for 35 years' experience, exactly how much printing of the bonds is going to be.
So it could get better.
But it's bid out. Could get better.
Get better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what we hope. I mean, we're all going to hope and keep our fingers crossed that it gets better in these couple of weeks rather than worse. But you know, like I said, we're so good now that, let's, you know, keep rolling in the right direction. That's all we can do. Yes.
Tom, a couple of points. The email which I received from, I think it was from Cliff, or maybe it was from Cliff to you, and he copied me in, with a refunding, the choices that we have in order to stay IRS compliant
Yes.
would be to either reduce our debt, which as to how really helpful that is another question, which you alluded to with your conversation with Dr.
Right.
Pike. Or we have to spend it on a capital project, and the capital project has certain criteria. It must have a life of 5 years and that sort of thing. Now, it just so happens that we have a capital project in the wings, which we're struggling to get going, for a pipe encasing a stream at the stadium needs to be replaced. So we're going to be doing that.
Right.
So it looks like at least some of that could go for that purpose. I hope we don't need it all for that purpose.
It certainly has adequate useful life, so yeah.
But so I think the one point I'm trying to make is that this isn't walking around money for us to be spending willy-nilly.
No.
There are defined limitations on what we can use it for, correct?
Absolutely, and that's by the IRS. And I should also point out, David, then finish your question, but this is a one-time shot, too. This is a neat opportunity that happened because the market came to us, and we can do it. And it's subject to going away.
Now, the other limitation we have is that for this calendar year, I think it's the calendar year, if we do this, then we can't do another borrowing this year.
You could, but there'd be ramifications interest rate-wise of a negative fashion, of a cost factor, yeah.
All right. Now, I believe that we don't have any projects in the wings that would require borrowing, but that's the only thing that we need to be aware of. If we were going to do some other project this year, then it's much more likely that it has to be out of our own pocket. Okay? So that's just the other caveat. And we can't do a tax anticipation.
Yeah, that's...
Tax revenue anticipation note, which we haven't done for a real long time. We used to do those, and it no longer benefits us because of all the IRS regs, plus the interest rates and some other factors. So those are the limitations. We can do this, we can get this savings, but there are limitations on how you use the savings, and once we've done it for this year, we probably couldn't do it again in a practical sense. So those are the points I wanted to make.
Till after January 1st, then?
Yes.
So if we don't use, say if we use it for the drain and we have so much money's left, could we, if we felt it was within the limit of doing the primary center with the air conditioning, that would also be considered a capital project, we could use the balance of that to go towards that, if it all worked in the...
I believe so.
Yeah,
I
you're
don't
allowed
wanna
to change your
presuppose
mind.
what
You
kind
can
of-
use it for 2 projects?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a possibility.
Provided that it meets the criteria about 5 years and some other
Yeah.
tests that they have.
Okay.
I mean, you could have a consensus, everybody could say, yeah, tonight, it looks like that pipe is where we're gonna put it, but tomorrow, if you change your mind, as long as it's maybe a roof, maybe as long as it's a capital project, that's, yeah. You don't have
Is
to,
there a time limit in which it has to be spent?
generally speaking, it's 3 years, but I don't think, and that would be arbitrage stuff, and we can't reinvest at rates that are anywhere close to the bond yield now, so arbitrage is sort of a thing. It used to be a real big concern, now it's kind of passe, so, in this economy anyway.
One other point so you understand. Tonight, you are not selling bonds,
Right.
okay? Tonight, what you are doing with this resolution is authorizing Piper Jaffray and Tom Kinney and our bond counsel, Eckert, Seaman, Schrin, and Malott, primarily Clifford Pascal, who's represented us for a long time, and myself, and also all of the staff, so that really means Mr. Salem in his office, to get going on this, because otherwise we don't know whether or not you want us to do it. Now, your decision points are tonight, and then you might have like a week or two where for some strange reason you decided, gee, we changed our mind, we just don't want to do this. You could stop everything, and you would probably have very little in the way of out-of-pocket costs. Once you get to the point where they go and go to the rating agency, I got a quote from Clifford Pastel indicating that that's an $8,400 likely expenditure. So once you spend that, that's gone, that has to be reimbursed. There's some advertising costs, several $100s, and some like copying and postage, stuff like that. And I didn't get a real firm number on the cost of putting it up on the preliminary official statement up on the web. It used to be a printing cost. I don't even know if there is a cost for that.
If we, now we won't, if you change your mind in 2 weeks, you don't owe us anything.
But when we get to like a couple of days
Well,
before,
if it was right up against it and...
there would
and
be some cost.
official statement,
Right.
which are literally books. You know,
You suggest this?
it would be unlikely that would happen because we don't do those books until right up when it's time to send them to buyers.
So the rating agency's
The
probably...
rating agency is the significant one, really.
Okay.
And it's about $8,000.
And I did get a quote from
And that's a
Mr. Pastel, so just that you have all the numbers.
several weeks away.
His likely, the fee for their law firm to handle this, he projected at $12,500 as a fixed fee. If you don't do the deal, then it's zero. So it's only if you do it that you incur that fee.
And that's the way our fee is.
My fee would be less than half that. I would project $6,000 as a set fee. Again, if you don't do the deal, then you just wash out. There is no fee. So it's only if you do it. So that way, you're protected if something really goes haywire. And the example that I hate to use, but I'm always thinking about is what if a tanker goes down in the Gulf? You know, it becomes a totally new night when that happens.
Let's get the resolution here on the table, and board members, now if you have something more to say, we can have discussion on it. And I'm going to honor a motion in a second, but we can discuss it then, and so we can bring it to a vote. Dr.
The resolution would read, be it resolved that the Board of School Directors hereby authorizes and directs the school district officials, the school district's underwriter, Piper, Jeffrey and Company, the school district's bond counsel, Eckert Siemens, Sharon Malott, LLC, and in particular, Clifford Pastel, and the school district's solicitor, David G. Patonic, to make all necessary preparations for the incurring of debt of the school district in the form of its general obligation bonds, to refund a portion of the school district's general obligation bonds, series of 2005, and to pay the cost of issuance of the bonds, and if possible, to use the cash savings for a capital project or projects. The underwriter, the bond counsel, and the school district solicitor, in consultation with the school district officials, are authorized and directed on behalf of the school district to take such actions as are necessary, appropriate, and customary to prepare for the bond issuance, including preparation and dissemination of a preliminary official statement, preparation of the required bond resolution, borrowing base certificate, debt statement, and other required documents, advertising of the bond resolution in accordance with the Local Government Unit Debt Act, submission of applications to rating agencies and bond insurance companies with respect to the proposed bonds, obtain proposals for the investment of proceeds of the bonds, and preliminary market of the bonds. Out-of-pocket expenses shall be reimbursed regardless of whether or not the school board passes a resolution to issue the bonds.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Baughman has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Mrs. Rhodes. Okay. Further questions, comments? Yeah, I'll just say this. Mr. Kinney has worked with us since the early 90s when I was around. You worked with Bill Porter for many years.
Yes.
I have high confidence in Bill Porter. And I don't know all the details of this. I'm a layperson on this, and I had high confidence in Mr. Kenny for his working with us. But let's raise any questions so we have it. In lay terms, as I understand it, would be like refinancing our property, our mortgage, at a lower rate. And when we do that, at the end of it, we'll have a little more money left over. So that's go ahead. Any questions that anyone has? Let's give somebody else a chance, or Dr. Fike.
After all the fees and everything is paid, how much money are we actually talking?
That's what what the heck was it I wanted to say? That number, that savings number is net of fees. Fees, it's already out of there. That's the real number for
That's
savings.
the real number on the page right here.
Yeah.
All the fees are out.
Everything. And that's right, when you were talking about fees, I want to say...
Let's read that number. What are you projecting?
513, what is it?
516.
Who wants the privilege of reading that number? It's 513,697. But as I said, I don't want to say cents and stuff because, this is not locked in yet. But that number is after all fees, all the costs, everything.
500,000,
over 500,000 right now.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, I'm sorry, in November, we come back and do this again, it could be an additional,
Be additional savings.
now, could we use the additional monies for the same capital project?
Yep. Yeah, oh yeah.
It just has to be in another year.
Yeah, it's a calendar year. As a matter of fact, one cool thing about the law is that the closing has to be next year. Now, that means is I could literally buy your bonds, say in November, and lock it in, and then we'll just sit around and wait until the closing, and you'll actually get the money January 1st. But we will have taken market risk away and locked it in sometime in November. That's a neat part of the law, because they go on closing, not purchase.
And the closing costs would be paid from?
That's already in here.
Proceeds.
No, the proceeds of the bond. It's already in there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already in there.
You're allowed to do that.
This could come back lower.
And it is capitalized in the bond. I'm sorry.
This could come back lower than that, depends on the market.
Yeah.
On the day it's sealed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll just keep our fingers crossed. It's so good that it's going to be good I can't imagine something going so bad that it's not going to be good, but it's not going to be exactly what we have tonight, I can assure you.
Okay. Dr. Fike, yes.
Hopefully better.
Good. Go ahead.
Can we lower our debt service payment then? Does this lower our annual debt service payment?
No, they're going to say the same. The annual, I mean, we could, but the benefit, again, you're looking at $20 million in bonds, spreading $500,000 over the life of this outstanding bond issue. I don't think you'd notice that benefit particularly each year if you spread this out over next 20 years or something like that, or out till 27, 28. But this way, you have capital needs, you have capital projects, you're getting this money today when it's worth more than it will be 10 years from now. I want to get a dollar in my pocket today rather than 10 years from now. And my dollar today is worth more than that dollar in the future.
It says in the motion, if possible, to use the cash savings.
I'm having trouble hearing that.
It says in the motion, if possible, to use the cash savings for a capital project. I thought that was a guarantee that we could do that.
Well, you can do it. Yeah, I don't know, David.
If possible.
I phrased that extremely conservatively, and I did it on my own at about 4:45 this afternoon after I saw the memo from Mr. Castell. The final resolution that you see will spell this out in greater detail. I was anticipating, without having had the chance to talk with him and Mr. Kinney at any further length, that we would be headed in the direction of using it as a capital project rather than trying to use it to pay down the total amount of the mortgage because of the less bang for the buck, so to say, in doing it that way. But I also wanted to make sure that we lined up our capital project properly. If for some strange reason we decided we didn't want to use it for a capital project, okay?
Oh, I understand.
Then you can turn around and say, okay, let's pay down the debt, even though we're not going to see a big star over this, we'd still do it.
If the project is possible. Okay, not the...
Yeah, you're not getting out there options
Okay.
either. You still, as long as and it is an IRS thing, by the way. None of us want to mess with those guys. It's capital projects or debt service. And you decide.
I understand what he was getting at there, if possible.
I'm going to call the question, ask for a roll call on the motion.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, that passes 8-0-1.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, what,
Just 8-0-0.
oh, very good. 8-0-0. I was... One absent. One absent, fine, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. $500,000.
$500,000.
Let's hope for it.
Absolutely. In this folder, I hope my business card's in all of them. If you guys have any questions, something occurs to you anytime, just give me a call and we'll answer your question. We'll be there for you. Thank you very much. Good to see you all again.
Nice to meet you.
Old business, there is none here on record, and we will move to new business, and I think you would
I'd like to introduce Greg Camerata. Greg is from Keytex Energy. We discussed the demand response system last week at great length. There were still some questions that we couldn't answer, so we asked Greg to come in and make a little presentation and perhaps answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for having me. I have some handouts there. My name is Greg Camerata. I'm with Keytex Energy. Keytex Energy is a energy procurement and agent for about 80% of the schools in the Westmoreland IU. The two primary things we work with the schools on is buying their electricity and also administering what we call a demand response program. Southmoreland has participated in this demand response program for the past 2 years, and they've made approximately $36,000 for their participation. So what I want to go through tonight is to just help you guys understand exactly what is involved with the demand response program and you know, what the minimal risk that there is to the program. It is a pretty complex program. It's one of the more complex programs that we administer. So there are quite a few rules and regulations behind the scenes as far as how it works and why things are the way they are. But basically what these programs are, demand response is in a category of programs called demand side management. And what demand side management is you can equate, if you look at the power grid and you have hundreds of power plants across the countryside generating electricity on a daily basis. Now, there is a normal projection for the increase in usage of electricity in southwestern PA. Okay, so you know, if you go on what's called the PJM website, PJM is essentially the equivalent of the New York Stock Exchange, except for electricity. Okay, so if you hear me use the term PJM, it's the grid and it's the exchange. Okay, so PJM has projections for how much electricity this region is going to use over the next several years. And based on those projections, they look at how much power is available from power plants on the grid. And so there's a normal schedule for essentially constructing these power plants. So the past couple years, we haven't really seen any power plants come online. I think the last power plant close to here that came online was down south of Uniontown, and that was about 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, so it's not something that happens very frequently, but by having these demand response programs, what you're essentially doing is you're getting people to agree to curtail their usage during peak times. And by agreeing to curtail usage during peak times, it alleviates the need to construct that next power plant. You can kind of push that off into the future. So say for instance there were no programs like this, you may have to build a power plant in 2014 to serve the needs. Okay, by having these types of programs and having school districts and companies agree to curtail during these peaks, okay, now they don't have to construct power plants to cover that peak. They know when there's a peak on a very hot day or a very cold day, they can simply call people that have agreed to these types of programs to curtail their usage, and that essentially solves the problem. So the way that you guys get paid for this is, you know, generally a power plant, whenever a power plant comes online, they get paid for being a power plant. They get paid for every megawatt they put onto the grid, but they also get paid essentially for being there and being available. So if a power plant is sitting here in Scottdale and they don't generate a megawatt of electricity, they still get something that's almost equivalent to a mortgage payment because they invested all that money in the power plant and it's just sitting there. So they get what's called a capacity payment. Okay, so the money that is generated by you guys shutting down if there's ever an emergency, that is exactly equivalent to the capacity payments that a power plant gets. Okay, it's the exact same dollar amount, it's the same everything. Okay, you're serving the same function that they do, so you're getting the same benefit that they do. There are a couple unique things that you should also know about capacity. Okay, the thing that schools worry about most with these types of programs is the fact that, you know, hey, we have kids in class, you know, during certain times, and it would be a real pain in the neck to have to turn off all the lights if there's one of these emergency events. So what I want to describe to you is a little more detail about the rules of the program, because the way that this is set up, it is actually very ideal for school districts. School districts are probably the most ideal customer for this type of program. The program, and there's in your handout on the right-hand side, I think the very first page, you can take a look at, and I'm going to be talking to certain rules that are shown on that page, but it takes place from June 1 to the end of September. Okay, so the only time that there could be a demand response event is in that time window, June 1 to the end of September. Okay, you guys are out of school most of that time, which makes it ideal. The only hours during the day that there could possibly be an event is noon until 8 p.m. Okay, so that's, from a time standpoint, that's when events occur. Now, what we have to look at is that there are different numbers of events that occur depending on geographically where you're located. Okay, if you look at the whole 13-state region that PJM, the grid, covers, okay, so across 13 states, there's one little pocket that there has never been an event. And the reason is, in this little pocket, there's some transmission constraints, almost bottlenecks in the grid, that make it nearly impossible for there to be an event in this little pocket. This little pocket that I'm describing is West Penn Power service territory in southwestern PA. So the lucky thing for you guys and for everybody else in West Penn Power service territory is, historically, there's never been an event, and the likelihood of there being a real event is minuscule. And again, I can get into a lot of reasons why. There's a lot of electrical engineering reasons why, but it's because of bottlenecks that are in the transmission grid in southwestern PA, the way the power flows. Most of the emergencies that you see are out in the eastern part of the state. Philadelphia area, out in that region, they'll see 4, 5, 6 events a year, real events, okay? Over here, we just don't see any. So the way this program is set up is that they don't want people participating in the program that actually can't curtail. So the way that they make you verify that you can curtail and get paid this money is, they say, if we go through a whole year and there's no events, we want to do a 1-hour test to just prove that you guys got paid for something that you were actually going to do. Okay, so the past 2 years that we've run this program for you guys, just like we expected, it just came down to the yearly test. You know, there were no real events. There was essentially a 1-hour test. So for 2 hours of work that you guys have done over the past 2 years, you guys have made $36,000 for 2 hours of work. One of the things that you would ask next would be, okay, this test, we got to make sure that this test does not occur during the school year, because even though there's no events, we still don't want to do a test if it's during the school year. Keytex Energy, because we administer the program, we get to pick the test date for all of our customers. Okay, so we have quite a few schools that participate in this program. So we have made the commitment to every school district that participates that, you know, we look at your schedule, we look at when your summer break is, and we select a test date to guarantee that the test is going to be when you guys aren't in session. Okay, so I know that that's very important, and that's something that we guarantee to you guys. Now, the other thing that I know is very important, and there's been questions about this at other school districts, is what if, you know, even though there's a 99.999% chance that there's not going to be a real event, what happens if there is, and what happens if it is June 1st and you guys are still in session, or September 28th and you guys are still in session? Okay, the way that the math of the program works is you need to distinguish between the test and a real event, okay? As long as you do the test, okay, and the test is something that we notify you 4 to 6 weeks in advance. It's going to be this hour, okay, and it's going to be during your summer break. As long as you do that test, like you have done a great job on the past 2 years, there's no way that you can lose money there's no way that you can lose money other than what you were going to get from the program. Okay, so the way, kind of what every other school district says is, listen, if there's an event and it happens during, during a time that's not our summer break, we're just not going to comply. Well, if you do that, you're essentially going to lose half your money. Okay, there's never been an event. Let's say there's one next year and you still did the test, you're going to lose half of the projected money that you're going to get. If there's 2 events and you completely ignore those 2 events, you're going to lose all the money that you were going to get, but you're not going to have any out-of-pocket money. The only way that you can have out-of-pocket money in this program is if you choose willingly not to do the test. And it really has to be a willing decision to ignore it, because I'll give you an example. New Kensington Arnold School District is one of our customers. Okay, and the first year they were very good in the program. The second year, and the way this works, the facilities folks go out and they flick the main breakers at the various schools that are participating. New Ken Arnold, for whatever reason, the facilities guy was off sick, and he didn't assign a backup on the day of the test. So they absolutely, during the test, did nothing. Okay, so they would have been subject to a penalty. But we have the ability to schedule a retest with them. Okay, so we said, hey, you guys didn't curtail at all. You're going to be subject to some out-of-pocket money. Let's schedule a retest for you guys before the end of the program. We scheduled a retest and they complied 100%. Okay, so you really got to understand that, yes, there is a possibility of out-of-pocket money, but it would literally have to be your decision that you want to pay out-of-pocket money, because you can do the test in the summer, and if you forget about it, which you won't because we send out these automatic notifications, you could technically retest and comply. So all that being said, your only risk at that point is the money that you would have gotten from the program. So the other thing I want to talk about is, the amount you get paid for this varies widely year over year. And it does that for 2 reasons that I want to go through. I had mentioned that, and if you look on the right side of your packet, I think the second paper back is a revenue estimate. Okay, the number that you want to look at on that revenue estimate is the very bottom 3 numbers. Okay, the very first number, the $1,354, that's for this coming year, and the numbers to the right are for subsequent years. You heard me mention earlier that you guys made $36,000 over the past 2 years. Okay, you can see that this coming year you're going to make $1,300 and some dollars, and then the following year you're going to make $2,200, and then the year after that you're going to make $10,300. The reason that those numbers change are twofold. Okay, one is just as the prior gentleman had mentioned about bonds, that the bond market changes on a daily basis. Okay, the electricity capacity market changes not on a daily basis, but there's quarterly auctions that happen for capacity. And there's a lot of things that drive that capacity value. Okay, but the important thing to understand is the capacity value is more cyclical. Okay, so it's kind of a boom-bust cycle. And that boom-bust cycle is kind of tied to power plants in a lot of ways. Okay, and I can kind of describe an example where capacity prices 2 years ago were extremely high. Okay, extremely high. So all the people that had potential power plant projects on the books, where they were thinking about building a power plant, but they had their finance guys running through the finances. They looked at those capacity prices and they said, wow, this makes a lot of financial sense to build this power plant. Okay? Well, what inevitably happens is at high capacity prices, too many people will build power plants. Okay? And they create excess capacity. So you'll see that market price of capacity take a nosedive. And it'll happen over a couple-year cycle. So 2 years ago, let's say as a benchmark, capacity prices might have been $65,000. Last year, they were, say, $40,000. They started taking a nosedive. The trough is essentially this year, this coming year, which they're about $6,000. Now, once it hits the bottom of the trough, it starts to create almost a shortage of capacity. Because it's such a low capacity price, nobody builds power plants because that's not enough money to cover all the construction costs and all the things they need to do to build power plants. So you'll see people withhold generation projects. And because they withhold those generation projects, you start to see the price ramp up. And that's what you see over the next couple years. Okay, it bottomed out this year. Next year it starts to ramp up. And the year after, it's not quite at the peak. It'll likely go higher the next year, which will probably approach what you guys made 2 years ago. Okay, so that is the primary driver of these values. The other driver is simply your peak usage. Your peak usage changes every year, okay? And that's essentially the multiplication that happens is your peak load times this capacity value is what you can get paid. Okay, so 2 years back, not only were capacity prices higher, but your peak load was higher back then. So when you multiply those two numbers, that's, you guys were making, $20,000 2 years ago. So I think the important thing to understand is it's a program that doesn't take a lot of effort on your part. It's going to take about an hour of time to do the test. You got your facilities guys, you run out, you do the breakers. So it doesn't take a lot of time. It's very minimal risk, and no money at this point I think is or some money is better than no money. It certainly would be great if every year it was $20,000 coming into the school district, but some years it's going to be $20,000, some years it's going to be $1,600. But I think it makes a lot of sense for you guys to stay in the program and continue to make money.
So very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Camerata. Questions, anyone here?
I'm going to recommend to you that for your motion that slightly change the wording, because I did talk with Mr. Camerata, but we don't have the final, contract form and language. And as I understand it, we need to get this done by May 12th.
Yeah, we have to get this done probably in the next 2 weeks to get it in for the deadline, the contract. And the contract that you've seen the past couple years, the contract that we're going to put in front of you is very similar to that. However, this is a PJM program, and the PJM rules have changed this year in how the program is administered. There are some differences as far as how we go out and we secure the capacity on your behalf. So there is some language in there that yourself and me can go over that are specific to this year and every year going forward. All the equations that you and I went over on the phone are identical, but there are the main language change basically says, listen, we have to go out, just like you guys were talking before about going out into the bond market, and whatever the price is on the day of closing. We have to do the same thing for your capacity. We have to go out and we have to secure that capacity at auction.
So by when do we have to sign that?
How soon do you have to sign the agreement?
Yeah.
You would have to sign the agreement probably in the next 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks.
Okay. So I'd recommend that it say the board approve entering into a new agreement with Keytex Energy for the demand response system. After review of the contract by the solicitor and authorize and direct the president to sign and the secretary to attest thereto.
Okay. Noted as it's stated here. Do I hear a motion to get this on the table? And then we'll have questions. Mr. Weiss?
So be.
Moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Rhodes. Question, comment. Go ahead, Dr. Pike.
It says in your brochure that there has never been an emergency in southwestern Pennsylvania. If that's the case, why would you do this?
Why would the grid do this?
Why would you do this? I mean, it says there's never been an emergency in southwestern Pennsylvania.
Because the grid, okay, the grid has to construct power plants for worst case scenarios, Okay, so, they project out how much usage there's going to be in southwestern PA, and then they have to put a margin on top of that, and then they have to make sure that there's enough power and power plants available to cover, that contingency, it's called. Okay, so even though there's never been an emergency, they are building the transmission system, and they are building power plants just in case. Okay, so the just-in-case construction of power plants costs money. So if they can push that off by paying people like you guys to participate in these programs, it makes financial sense to them.
But it would be like building a dam in the middle of the desert or something. I mean, if you're never going to need it.
No, it's not that you're never going to need it. Okay, there's electricity usage grows every year. Every year it grows. So capacity construction takes so long. It takes years to build power plants. So they have to be planning their capacity resources years in the future. So by you guys committing to this, that affects what is going on the power grid next year and the year after and the year after that, because they know they have this capacity secured by people like you guys curtailing. So it truly is pushing off power plant construction and capital expenditures.
And how long is this contract supposed to be?
The demand response program is a yearly program. However, the way that it is administered starting this coming year is we have to bid into auctions on your behalf to secure this capacity, and the auctions are 2 and 3 years into the future. Okay, so in other words, and again, I'm going to equate it to the bond discussion, where you guys go out into the bond market and you buy a bond, and that bond is for today. Okay, because of the lag time for capacity auctions that are occurring today are for 3 years into the future. Okay, so in order to do this, us and Keytex and every other curtailable service provider that does this, we have to change our contracts to be multi-year contracts, because there's no way we could bid 3 years in advance unless we knew you were going to be a customer 3 years in advance.
Let me just explain this little point to make it very easy.
Sure.
What we do by shutting down is not using the capacity that the school is using, and we guarantee that that capacity can go where it's needed for that period of time. It's just like a little battery that when we shut down, that's more power that's usable for the people who actually need it at a brownout situation.
Yes. If they're, and those are usually very short-term spikes. We have a 95-degree day. Everybody comes home from work, flicks on their air conditioner. It'll be a very short-term event when you see these emergencies. But again, you are correct that there's never been an event, but they still have to plan for these contingencies.
How long is an event?
An event, well, they vary, okay? All that we can do is look to eastern Pennsylvania, because that's where they have events. The events range anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, typically.
Okay, are there other, unless somebody else has a comment, I'm going to call a roll here on this.
I just want to ask, when he added, after the review of the contract and the lawyer and the president, if you get the contract and David, you see some, like if we say yes to this tonight, and you get the contract, you're like, whoa, I don't like something, then
we're going to have a special meeting.
Okay.
I spent quite a lot of time on the phone with Mr. Camarada, and we went through some math on this, because he sort of took me through the formula, so I felt a lot better after we did that.
Okay. And I understand, Mr. Patonic, that I do owe you, a workup of the formula with real numbers in, just as an example, and I still do plan on getting that to you.
Okay.
This is a vote on the unknown, though. We don't know.
Okay, I'm going to ask for the roll call, please.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
No.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes? And that is 7 yes, 1 no, and 1 absent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
Let's move to the 2011-2012 school calendar revision that we talked about last week.
It is recommended that the board approve changes to the 2011-2012 school calendar as follows. February 12, 2012, President's Day would be an Act 80 day and no longer be listed as the first snow makeup day. April 5th would be the second snow makeup day, April 9th, the third snow makeup day, and April 10th, the first snow makeup day.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Kaufman makes the motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Polakowski.
Just if I could ask a
Sure, question or comment?
Yes, I see this is just for this year for April, but I'm looking further ahead. I don't see what we talked about for the Kennywood Day and all that stuff.
That's the 2012-2013 calendar, and that's the actual printed calendar that you got. So we didn't detail that in the motion because it was printed and it was not a change.
All right, I'm sorry. Thanks.
No, good question.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
good question. Okay, I'm going to call the question. Roll call.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes. There are 8 yes and 1 absent. Move to the school calendar 2012-2013 for approval.
It is recommended that the board approve the 2012-2013 school calendar with the first in-service Act 80 day beginning August 22nd, 2012, and the tentative last day of school scheduled as a clerical day on June 3rd, 2013.
And this one includes the
Yes, the Kennywood.
modification for the Kennywood Day.
Yes.
Do I hear a motion?
So,
Ms. Rhodes makes the motion. Did you second it?
sure.
Okay. Ms. Kaufman makes the second. Roll call?
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes. There are 8 yes and 1 absent. The policy 703 on sanitary management. This has to do with the gymnasium. Go ahead.
Right. It is recommended that the board approve the posting for 30 days of policy 703 sanitary management with the recommended changes.
Is there a motion? Ms. Love?
Second.
Second by Mr. Beistel. Questions, comments? Remind us.
This was the policy. Currently, we have a policy that allows absolutely no food or drink in the gymnasium. That policy would be amended to permit beverages for athletes only.
Okay. I think we're ready to vote. No comment. Go ahead. Roll call.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
No.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 7, 1, and 1 absent. Maybe just a comment. This will be posted for 2 months. I think we talked to a lot.
30 days.
How's that?
30 days.
30 days.
Well, it'll be
Sorry.
30 days, but it'll end up being 2 months because our March board meetings will fall before the 30-day posting period, so we won't be able to vote until the April meeting, so it will be about a 2-month posting.
You know, I would welcome at the March meeting some discussion. I'm not trying to weigh in, but on the question of from a cleaning and a maintenance, there's no question. We don't want anything in there. I mean, it's easier. From a fan standpoint, I think it's it's not bad to have food in there, and I go by places. So I sort of the pros and cons of that, I would welcome the staff to maintenance and the athletic director to give some comments on that. Policy 821, classroom decorum.
It is recommended that the board approve the posting for 30 days of policy 821, classroom decorum, with the recommended changes. And again, all that does is add the phrase that we're not permitting plug-in air fresheners and electric candle burners within classrooms.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Kaufman, motion.
Second.
Second. Who is that? Mr. Polakowski. Roll call.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Feig?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes. That passes 8 yes and 1 absent. Policy 210.1, and this is in regards to possession, use of asthma inhalers, and some other things here. Go ahead.
And after the posting of this policy, one of the things we would certainly do would be to get some input from our faculty as well as our nursing staff. So that will happen during the posting period. But it is recommended that the board approve the posting for 30 days of policy 210.1, possession and use of asthma inhalers and epinephrine auto-injectors.
Okay.
Motion.
Motion by Mrs. Rhodes.
Second.
Second by Mr. Beistel.
Question on the motion.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Feig.
We got a copy of the motion in our packets, and attached to it was a document that was kind of yellow. It was all yellowed out. And as I looked at it, that was legislation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is just, I don't have any problem with policy. My question is, why would we have to pass a policy for something that's already a law?
Because the legislation reads that each LEA or each school district will pass a policy, and the reason they want the policy passed is because with local control and local governance, they require that these be permitted, but it's within the purview of the local school district to set the parameters on how the inhalers and the auto-injectors are used. So each district would adopt a policy that fits its own needs. So in other words, you have to have a policy that says they're allowed, but perhaps our policy might look a little bit different than Hempfield's or Mount Pleasant's, just based on you know, the availability of nursing staff that we have in each building, perhaps, you know, different things like that.
The reason I'm asking this question is, like I said, I have no problem with the policy. But for example, there's a law that says you must stop at a stop sign. We didn't have to adopt a policy saying you have to stop at our stop signs in the high school parking lot or something like that. My question is, I thought that legislation or law superseded everything. Am I not right?
Well, the law says you have to pass a policy describing how you're going to allow kids to have them. The law says you have to allow the kids to have these things.
Well, yeah.
But, so we get to decide how.
And how will you do that? Aren't we just sort of copying what was in the legislation?
Well, the sample policy that I gave you was not legislation. That was a PSBA boilerplate. All right, so that's our policy. The policy might look different, for example, in a school district where there is one nurse for every 5 buildings. So they might have a policy that looks a little bit different so that they can ensure, especially for kids who aren't able to use these on their own, as to where they might be stored, who might administer them, whereas we might write that a little bit differently based on our needs. Now, that's an example.
Okay, my question was, I thought that the legislation superseded anything.
Well, the legislation says you will pass a policy.
Yeah.
Very good. So we'll post this, we'll vote on it, and then if you post it, then we can still, it could be modified further in that period. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 8 yes and 1 absent. CSIU, the Accounting System Agreement.
It is recommended that the board approve entering into an agreement with the Central Susquehanna Intermediate Unit to provide the district with an accounting system software program at a yearly cost to the district of $20,000.
Okay, this came last week. We discussed it. Mr. Salem recommended this. Do I hear a motion to get it on the table here? Mr. Beistel makes a motion.
Second.
Second by Ms. Rhodes. Roll call.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes. Passes 8 yes and 1 absent. The PMEA Region Band Festival.
It is recommended that the board approve an overnight trip for 4 students, Aaron Duggar, Samuel Ellenberger, Angela Lowe, and Sarah Thompson, to attend the PMEA Band Festival at Norwin High School, Wednesday, February 22nd through Friday, February 24th, 2012. And again, the reason they were requesting the overnight stay is because of the rates that Norwin was able to get in terms of hotels. It's less expensive to the district to have these kids stay overnight than it is to transport them back and forth on a daily basis.
So moved.
Ms. Kaufman?
Second.
And that is seconded by Ms. Love.
I have a question on the motion. Should it say 2 overnights in here? Or is it not 2 overnights? It's 2, isn't it?
Well, it's 1 trip, but it would be 2 nights, yeah.
What is the cost for something like this? Do you know? The whole thing.
You mean, what does it cost to put on a band festival? Or what does it cost us for each kid?
They don't offer a band festival, but when you take in all the costs in it, do we have any idea what we
Yeah, a commuter student, it costs $70 plus transportation, and the cost for students to participate and stay in the hotel is $105. And that includes transportation to Norwin High School from the hotel.
And two days of substitute teachers? The teacher doesn't go on this one?
Let me see here. I believe Mrs. Gore would be accompanying them, although it does not specifically say that in her request. Yeah, it would cost a sub, because she does say in her letter that she does not need a hotel room, as the students are being provided with qualified chaperones and security in the hotel throughout the meeting. So she would be there, but apparently she would commute.
Because I know in the past she has had rooms.
Right.
This is different.
Yeah, she does not need a room.
Thank you.
Very proud of these students here to get this honor. Let's have the roll call.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 8 yes and 1 absent. Okay, I would entertain a motion for a break here for an executive session and move it to personnel.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Rhodes.
Second.
Second by Ms. Kaufman. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. To reconvene.
So be it.
Mr. Beistel, and is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Kaufman. Okay. Question. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it. We will move then to personnel, and Dr. Moeller, go ahead.
It's recommended that the board approve Kathy Smith as a one-to-one assistant at the Southmoreland Middle School for the 2011-2012 school year with the caveat that this position will be eliminated when it is no longer needed for this particular student.
So moved.
Rhodes? Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Kaufman. Roll call?
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that carries 8 yes and 1 absent. High school yearbook sponsor.
It is recommended that the board approve Brenton DeFlitch as the high school yearbook sponsor for the 2012-2013 school year at the contracted supplemental rate.
Motion. Is that Ms. Love? Yep, Mrs. Love.
Second.
Second, Mr. Beistel. Roll call?
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 8-0. I'm sorry, 8 and 1 abstention, or 1 absent. Move to baseball assistant coaches and volunteer coaches.
It is recommended that the board approve the following coaching recommendations submitted by head baseball coach Brian Shipley. Bill Shipley as assistant varsity baseball coach, Mike Davis as assistant varsity baseball coach and head JV baseball coach, Al Govern, Clint Weibel, Casey Schultz as volunteer assistant baseball coaches for the 2011-2012 school year.
So moved.
Dr. Fike makes the motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Polakowski. Roll call?
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 8 and 1 absent. And we move to volunteer softball coaches.
It is recommended that the board approve the following volunteer coaches as recommended by head softball coach Kim Kelly for the middle school, Wes Nicholson and Todd Bunner. These positions are for the 2011-2012 school year.
So moved.
Dr. Fike makes the motion.
Second.
There's, Ms. Love makes the the second. I think I heard some others there too. Let's vote. Roll call.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 8 and 1, 8 yes and 1 absent. Assistant volleyball coach.
It is recommended that the board approve the hiring of Christina Gabinet as the assistant volleyball coach at the contracted supplemental rate on recommendation of head volleyball coach Sam Kaufman.
So moved.
Is there a motion? Ms. Kaufman?
Second.
Second, Mr. Polakowski. Roll call?
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 8 yes and 1 absent. And we move to volunteer middle school volleyball coach.
It is recommended that the board approve Christy Bunner as a volunteer middle school volleyball coach for the 2011-2012 school term on recommendation of head volleyball coach Sam Kaufman.
So be.
Mr. Beistel.
Second.
Motion, second, Mrs. Kaufman. Roll call.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yep.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Love? Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 8 yes and 1 absent. And we move to resignation of the golf coach.
It is recommended that the board accept the resignation of Lynn Kendrish as the varsity golf coach and authorize administration to post and advertise the position.
So moved.
Ms. Rhodes makes the motion,
Second.
and Ms. Love seconds. And roll call.
Question on the motion.
Oh, sorry, sure, thank you.
I just
Dr.
want to
Quinn.
say that I want to thank Lynn for her service. I'm sorry that she was not able to continue, we understand. But I think I speak for all of us when I say that we appreciate what she has done, and we wish her well. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and there are 8 yes and 1 absent, and it carries. FMLA leave.
It is recommended that the board approve an FMLA leave with no break in service for Gia Posca, art teacher at the elementary schools, starting on or about May 23rd, 2012, at the conclusion of her sick days, and this would go through the end of the school term.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Kaufman?
Second.
Second, Ms. Polakowski.
Question on the motion. Are they coming back at the end of the year? And if they don't, do we do it again for next year? How do we do this?
She's, I believe she is planning to come back.
And the next one too?
I believe Katie Price is also planning to come back. Elizabeth Goodman is planning to extend hers through November 5th.
Oh, I see, yeah, through November
Right.
5th. But these are to the end of the school year.
As
And
it
if they
stands
don't come
now,
back,
yes.
we do something else.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Roll call?
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 8, and 8 yes and 1 absent. Another FMLA.
It is recommended that the board approve an FMLA leave with no break in service for Katie Price, middle school mathematics teacher, starting on or about May 3rd, 2012, at the conclusion of her sick days through the end of the school year.
So be it.
Mr. Beistel? Motion.
Second.
Second, Ms. Kaufman. Roll call?
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 8 yes and 1 absent. Moving to another FMLA leave.
It is recommended that the board approve an FMLA leave with no break in service for Elizabeth Goodman, high school art teacher, starting on or about May 12th, 2012, at the conclusion of her sick days through November 5th, 2012.
So moved.
Ms. Kaufman makes the motion.
Second.
And a second by Mrs. Rhodes, and the roll call.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mrs. Love? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Dr. Fike?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, and that passes 8 yes and 1 absent. And I think we're going to move to the day-to-day substitute list.
It is recommended that the board approve additions to the 2011-2012 day-to-day substitute list, which include Laura Bell, Lisa Bickerstaff, Devon DeJesus, Carrie Hudock, Ashley Presack, Tammy Ross, Leslie Street, and Kimberly Struble.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Could we stand by for just a moment on that? Additional names there, Whitney Weimer, those are all teachers, and secretary aide would be Rebecca Hickson, and Lisa Williams is a cafeteria employee. We would add those to the list as well, please.
Ms. Rhodes, is that still with your motion?
Yes, that's fine.
Those
Second.
additions, is there a second?
Somebody
Jason Polakowski. Thank you. Roll call?
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
No.
Dr. Pike?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, 8 yes and 1 absent, and carries. Ready for board reports?
Yes.
We're ready for board reports here, and student report, I guess that's given here in written. Do you have something
Right.
more to say on that?
No, I do not.
Okay, we'll just receive those as written reports for our information, and then move to the CWCTC report, and I'm trying to think who does that.
I do that.
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Our meeting was held on January 18th, and there was several different permissions granted for the VOTEC to sell some of their items that they no longer use anymore as scrap, like old motorcycles and things like that. They passed that resolution. And also, some of the kids are in the middle of their various competitions right now, so when we go back, we'll find out the results of that for them. And they're still in the middle of collecting applications for the director and the assistant director, so there's going to be a big changeover at the end of the year, so they're still looking for candidates for that. So that was all for the January meeting.
Josie, did they talk about that lawsuit that those teachers had brought against?
No, I just read that in the paper. That must have happened after. Yeah, the ones for Jeanette, the math. I just read that in the paper the other day.
What's curiosity?
Transfer of entities.
They, when they had math teachers last year, and they got rid of the math because the math came back to our schools. So they furloughed like 3 or 4 math teachers, and the union states that if there's any job within the area, these math teachers have to be hired first. And I believe it was Jeanette School District was hiring.
There was 2 districts.
They were hiring teachers, and they did not hire the tech teacher.
So it's actually the teachers that filed the lawsuit, not the school. Probably the school's not really involved in it.
No, the teachers union filed the lawsuit.
Okay. Thank you. Westmoreland Intermediate Unit report.
The regular meeting of the board at the Westmoreland IU was held on January 24th, 2012. The opening of that meeting was absolutely breathtaking. There is a school called Clearview, which is located very near the IU, which is a center for children who have very serious handicaps. And they brought the Clearview School choir over there to sing for the board. 75 other people came. These kids came from all over the county. Their parents brought them. The music and their presentation was absolutely beautiful. They were wearing these robes, these choir robes, these gorgeous choir robes that were purchased by the IU Foundation. It's called the Westmoreland IU Foundation. But the thing that just gave me chills was one of the boys, and he's from Norwin. I think his name was Robert. I don't know. But anyhow, this child who is severely handicapped, a cappella sang the national anthem, and it just gave us chills. He had perfect pitch. The director of special ed is trying to see if she can get him to be able to sing the national anthem at maybe a pirate game. And it just was so beautiful to see this boy do this with the serious handicaps he has to deal with, when in fact we have people at halftime at the Super Bowl who can't remember the words. But it was very touching, and they got a standing ovation. It was just a beautiful thing. 6 new board members were seated, and there was a presentation given that does involve us. I'll go over it briefly. It's called SIS. It's a student management and enrollment system for 1,800 students in all districts who are registered or enrolled in the E-Academy. Now, this is a self-sustaining system, and this SIS crosses all districts and entities that are served. And what it will do is, if you have a student taking an E-Academy course, you can get a weekly grade from this teacher, but it's protected. It's a protected system. They can't put everybody's grades out so everybody can see everybody's grades. You get just the one. It's like a HIPAA thing for grading. You get very rapid feedback. the initial cost was $22,000 with a $7,000 annual thing, but the bottom line is this is a system that our school district will be involved in if any of our children take e-academy courses, and it's a way to give us information on a very private basis. We voted to terminate 2 teachers for poor performance, not showing up for work, things like that. They hired a new business manager. Her name is Allison Willis, and she is presently the business manager for the Mount Pleasant School District. She had worked at Hempfield School District and in Mount Pleasant, and now she's going to the IU. And I did have the pleasure of meeting her, and she's a very nice person. She's got a big job. The IU has 56 different accounts and budgets, 56. Any special ed teacher, whether it's ours or anybody else's, is eligible to apply for an impact grant. And applications have been sent to the school district, and if the teacher would like to apply for a grant to get something extra, they can do this. On Saturday, February the 4th, there was a legislative meeting at the IU. Dr. Molnar, do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to talk about it?
Go ahead, Doctor.
Okay. Basically, I think she said there were 55 people. They were all school board members and business managers and administrators. There were administrators there from all the school districts in the intermediate unit. And there were, I believe, 5 legislators there. And they talked about a number of issues. One of the main ones I seem to hear a lot about is the charter school and the way the funding is occurring. And the main issue is the people there perceive that the charter schools have a lack of accountability, that they don't have to live up to the same rules that we do. But there was a lot of talk about teacher strikes, legislation regarding some of these things. There's legislation pending in Harrisburg on a number of issues, and these were discussed with the legislators, and it was about a 2-hour meeting with feedback, or I would say an interchange of conversation and discussion between the legislators and all the people who were there. The IU did the general budget review. Now, when I talk about their operating budget, that's just that building in Greensburg. That has nothing to do with their special ed programs or their schools or anything like that. You pay by size, and the Southmoreland contribution is $12,947. Their total budget is $4,822,000, and they have a fund balance of $1.6 million, which is less than 2%. I just want to mention the state gives no money to the IU for their operating budget. They do give some money for special ed and some other reimbursements, but for the actual operating budget, they don't do that. We were told by the retiring business manager that health care costs are expected to increase between 8 and 12%, and that most of the places there set the rate in April and May. They appointed me as the chairman of the special ed committee for the IU board. And this morning I met for 2 hours with the director of special education, and we planned a series of, we're going to present little mini workshops and little information sessions to the board at each of the meeting, and we have selected topics. Special ed is a very, very complicated area, very widespread. The IU has 140 classes or something to that effect, but this has to do with we're going to talk about some of the very specific aspects of special ed, and it should be beneficial to the new board members because some of them have not had much experience with them. On Monday, the 13th of February, I will be attending a workshop. Jack, is anybody going from the IU on the, or from this district to the IU on the response intervention?
No.
Okay. Let me tell you very briefly what this is, and I think you'll find it very interesting. When you talk to business managers or administrators, without exception, they will say that special ed costs are huge, that they are a major, major concern in everybody's budget. I think we're typical, they're running 15 to 16%, which is about 1 out of every 6 or 7 kids in our school district is in special ed. The government feels it should be 5 to 6%. So what they've done is they are really dealing with the cause of this problem, which is called over-identification. And I won't bore you with the details, but what they're basically saying is that many, many, many kids who end up in special ed for life, who are labeled, shouldn't be there. There are interventions that can be put in place to get kids through some of the rocky times, to help them with their behavioral issues. We're going to talk about a mental health component in the schools. If you have a child, instead of labeling them emotionally disturbed, for example, if you can provide the mental health issues, the mental health services, and the therapy and so forth, you can probably help that kid through it without labeling them special ed. But this is a federal thing. So the federal government has said this is out of control. We've got to get the special ed identification process under control here. And they have a speaker coming in from the University of Oregon. I think she said she had about 60 people scheduled. And what it is, it's a program to talk to teachers and administrators about how you can help kids without labeling them. And it's this intervention response that they're talking about. What can you do on an intervention basis, and with maybe a team of other people to help solve some of these problems without the hardcore identification of these kids as special ed. And there seems to be a national concern about that, because with special ed numbers running around 16% instead of 5 or 6%, there's a concern. Now, some people feel that some of that is due to speech. You have people listed as speech, because that is an exceptionality. But what isn't really talked about is many, and Jack, you can verify this with me, many kids who are diagnosed something else are also getting speech.
Correct.
So there's a whole lot of speech going on that isn't speech by itself, but they're even looking at some of that in terms of how we can begin to gain control, because they can't pay the bills anymore. It's become, Jack, that's one of the exceptionalities for referendum now, isn't it? Special ed or
yes.
Costs, I think, yeah. But anyhow, I'll go to that meeting on Tuesday and I'll report then to the IU board. But it's the beginning of the newest effort now to deal with the problems of over-identification and labeling, which can be very traumatic to a child and can have a lifetime stigma. So they are working on that. Our next meeting is March the 28th.
A couple things to add to Dr. Fike's report. You will be getting copies of the IU budget in your March packets for your perusal. Every district that belongs to the IU is required to either approve or disapprove that budget, so we will send that out in your March packets. Dr. Fike talked about RTI, or RTII as it is sometimes called. Several years ago when RTII first came out, we as a district made a conscious decision not to get involved with that per se, because a lot of what happens in RTII mirrors what we're doing with our collaborative professional learning community model, dealing with our pyramids of interventions. So we have a very similar program in place. That's not to say RTII is better or worse than what we're doing, but they are kind of parallel programs.
Jack, I made the comment that I think we're already doing so much of that. I told them, I said, I think that, I think we're one step ahead. We may call it something else, but we're actually doing a lot of those interventions already.
One of the things that we noticed is if you do RTII by the book, it requires a tremendous amount of documentation. We felt that our time was better spent in collaborative planning and designing interventions rather than spending a lot of time doing the documenting, so that's why we did not
It's a work in progress. They want to try to limit that too, because that is an issue. But I think we're one step ahead.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that report. PSBA, the Pennsylvania School Board Liaison Report. We just mentioned here, maybe somebody else was going to mention too, several of us attended the legislators' breakfast on Saturday morning. That was very helpful, and we'll report back, or we'll hear more of it, I'm sure, when we get the budget, the next stage here in the budget. Just one note of that. We were the school district that was named there various times. The word is out in our region about our overachieving status. So that was kind of an interesting note there in sitting there. Good. Superintendent's report.
I have a couple of items. I do have one walk-on item that just came to me today. On March 7th through 9th, the PMEA is sponsoring their regional chorus concert, and that is occurring in Mercer. 3 of our students have qualified, so we would request permission for an overnight trip for those 3 individuals as well as their teacher. The students who qualified are Aaron Duggar, Sam Ellenberger, and Brendan House. So we would entertain that motion.
So be it.
Mr. Beistel makes the motion. Second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Rhodes.
When is this? When is this?
March 7th through 9th.
Roll call?
Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mr. Alt.
Yes.
Mr. Beistel.
Yes.
Dr. Fike.
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mrs. Love.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, and that passes 8 yes and 1 absent, and we'll continue with the report.
And the other item I had was already mentioned earlier, but I just wanted to pass along kudos and compliments to our school community. It was under the leadership of the Middle School Honor Society for their Gene Drive. I think that's a tremendous piece of work that they're doing. I think we should be very proud of them, so I did want to mention them in my report. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I was able to attend a new Superintendent's Academy in Harrisburg on January 18th and 19th, followed by a trip on Friday, January 20th, to a school board president's training in Pittsburgh. And then on Saturday and Sunday, the 21st and 22nd, I was with Mrs. Love, Mr. Polakowski, and Mr. Beistel, and we spent Saturday and Sunday at the IU at new board members training. So I thank those folks for their attendance there. I thought that there were some pretty good days, and we learned quite a little bit there. So thank you for your attendance. I'd like Mr. Salem, if he would, maybe to just talk a little bit about where we stand in terms of the budget and where we're moving from here.
Dr. Molnar is referring to the governor's budget presentation, which I believe was on Tuesday. Dr. Scott and Dr. Molnar and I sat in his office and watched the governor make his presentation. What the governor is doing is introducing a new term to our vocabulary, the Student Achievement Education Block Grant, or SAEBG. What that is, it's repackaging of 4 traditional funding sources from the state: the basic education funding, the pupil transportation subsidy, the non-public and charter school transportation subsidy, and the Social Security subsidy. What they're doing is taking those 4 components and bundling them together into the SAEBG. In fiscal year 2011-12, combined, we received $10,531,099 from those 4 subsidies. In fiscal year 2012-13, we should receive $10,593,047 from the SAEBG. Mind you, those figures came the following day after the governor's report, after the governor's budget, after the PSBA and the PDE had time to digest them. The difference between last year and this year is that we should be getting $62,000 more, or less than 1% additional monies from those 4 subsidies because of the combination of the SAEBG. Unfortunately, the governor's budget eliminates the accountability block grant, which provided us with $146,000 last year. So in all, it's a net loss of $84,000 for the district. This comes at a most inopportune time when our pension costs have increased $400,000 from last year. Our health insurance costs should be increasing $200,000 to $250,000, and the maximum additional revenue that we can raise ourselves is only $180,000. Currently, our budget deficit can be made up by a transfer from fund balance, but we can't go to that well too often. It's just not prudent. I would recommend that the Finance Committee or the Board should meet in early March, because these numbers are going to change between now and the time the budget is actually adopted by the General Assembly. But if we can meet in early March to talk about the budget after Dr. Moe and Dr. Scott and I attend a PASBO conference on budget, maybe we could talk more about the budget then. That's all for now.
Questions for Mr.
Yes.
Salem?
Oh. May I say something, or somebody else? Somebody else talk?
Sure, go ahead.
At a meeting, I think it was 2 meetings ago, I had I've been on, this is my 3rd year on the board, and there's never been a budget meeting to discuss the budget in terms of, how it would be made, per se, budget meeting. And I had asked the question, how would the public participate? Because they have a horse in this race. The budget that's been proposed contains a tax increase. And I think, I was told that they would be able to speak during citizens' comments. Is that right? But that once the meeting started, there would be nothing more they could say for any interaction. So a number of people have asked me about different things. So what I did, and you don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I put all these questions that they had for me in written form, and some of the facts that are going on. And I thought maybe that might be an orderly way for us to address some of the concerns that the people have. I also attached information that we have had, like the new board members wouldn't have had some of this, about some of the statistics and so forth. And in this week, I think it was this week, we got that PSBA book, that green book, that talks about what is the average salary in our region, what is the average salary for the various positions in a district that has our aid ratio. We get about 65 cents of every dollar from the state. So we're considered a poor district, and it talks about that, and I copied that and some articles that were in there. So it's addressed to Josie Kaufman because she's the chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee. And the only question, I think, the first question is they want the public, like, when will we have meetings? Will they be advertised? How will we do this? And that's probably the first thing. But we can look at this. Like I said, you don't have to if you don't want to. These are just questions that people have asked me. And would you pass those down?
Okay. Very good. Thank you. And I'm sure those will be considered at the appropriate time. Thanks. And Ms. Kaufman heard those.
I have copies for the public if anybody wants.
And you're passing them out to us. Let's move. Is there something else, Superintendent?
I have nothing else.
Okay. Let's move the solicitor's report.
Very briefly, most of my report was the matters that you've already dealt with. Periodically, we receive right-to-know requests, and I just wanted you to be aware of this. We received one from Simon Campbell, who wanted the names of all 9 school board directors, the agency-issued school email addresses for the 9 elected school board members, and then the fax number of the school district to receive right-to-know requests and the email address. I double-checked this with the statute and did some research on cases that have already gone to the Office of Open Records and came to the conclusion that these are public items of information. The anomaly is that so the names of the school board members were provided, and the method to ascertain your Southmoreland email addresses. We also mentioned that not all of you folks have computers, and not all of you use the email addresses. But you may be getting emails from him or all kinds of different groups, and so I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Who is Mr. Samican?
He is a private citizen who has been historically involved with the issues over school strikes in Pennsylvania, and he is advocating to try to prevent school strikes.
Is he from like our local area?
No, he's from the central part of the state. And there's another request from another individual affiliated with another institution who's made a somewhat similar request, although it's a little bit different, so I'm taking a look at that one. So you may have full email boxes if you read them. That's all.
Thank you.
Are you giving personal email or just the school?
No, only the school.
Oh, well.
They're not entitled to your private email address
That's what I
or
was
to your
thinking.
mailing address, but the school-issued email address.
Well, that's always been on television.
Okay.
Could have found that out by looking there.
Dan Kiefer, I think you have a few comments. And our brains are turning to jelly, so we will keep this to a 5-minute.
Do I got a microphone?
Yes.
Thanks for letting me come up. It's really important to me, important to the people that I associate with that this forum maintain, and not only maintain, but exercise. A few comments on tonight's meetings as I was going through. I got really involved with our national energy policy when I started working on the gas fracking issue a couple of years ago, and really got involved with the investment bankers when I got involved with the Occupy Wall Street about 3 months ago. So those two issues I just couldn't let pass tonight. But, I really have nothing but contempt for these two paradigms and these structures, and I'm not going to espouse my ideology on that or my things, but let me just move on. And coming to this podium tonight sort of reminds me of when the Iranian President Ahmadinejad followed President Bush to the podium at the United Nations, and they're called President Bush the Great Evil One. I don't emphasize with the Iranian leader or happy losers of grandeur, but I'm just trying to make a point here, and we go take them one by one. In my view, these bankers are and these energy people epitomize what I would say is the fascist look that we see on America today. And you have to define fascism. Dr. Scott, I remember you brought this up a few meetings ago. I would say the definition of fascism is when you can't tell the difference between the state and the corporations. And that's you guys being the state in this case, and the industry of the bankers and the industry of the energy being the corporations. So first with the bankers, we're $50 million in debt, and we have promises of retirement. And there's 3 words that are interchangeable in most of the world's religious texts, and that would be debt, sin, and trespass. So we compare this to the home mortgages, and if you look at the home mortgages in America today, it's a crisis. It's I tell people in all phases of mortgage right here in your tax base, it's not pretty when someone gets evicted. It's not pretty when they're homeless. And I'm working with this on a daily basis. So again, it's not going to pass when this podium's up here for me. I'm sorry, I wrote these up just now. So let's look one more point then on this $50 million debt we have. And the guy comes in here with a white horse, a suit and tie, and everyone's thanking him for what he's doing for us. And we're not talking about the service that we have on this debt and what that's doing to our community, what it's doing to the country, what it's doing to the world, what we had in 2008, and what's going on in Greece, what's going on in California with bankruptcy. So we just think the old model that's brought us here is going to be here 5 years down the road, and I don't think that way. It's just wrong to pass this debt on to our children, and you all hear that party line, so I'm not going to espouse on that. So do you think that, Seaman Eckerd's, which I, again, have been banging heads with now for 3 months, will really come in and help the student loans who are underwater? Our student loans, these kids that you pump into the college system, the student loan amount exceeds the credit card amount in America, and that's just hard to believe what a debtor nation we are personally and as a nation. Almost done here. I know you're to summarize that, then I think you're in bed with the devil. You think it's the opposite. Real quick now on the guys coming in here and selling us this energy thing, and I'm not saying that little detail is wrong, but basically my view of the energy issue is that we have, and we're getting back to the definition of fascism, these big energy companies, the coal, oil, gas, and nuclear, want to cut down their production of energy, and that will hold back their control of the price in the market, while green energy, lifestyle modifications, all those other aspects are marginalized, and the monopoly keeps moving along. And I'm going to let that one go. Two more things. As far as the gymnasium thing, we're not taking food in. I think we should have no gambling in the gymnasium. I think we should have no sugar, and I think that we should take down the Pepsi and the Mountain Dew signs. Last point that I asked to speak about citizen comments for the last 3 or 4 meetings. I'm going to proceed on that tonight. I don't know what changed your mind, but I guess that's going to come out down the road. One question.
Please, your 5 minutes are up.
Finish?
Can you conclude?
Here's the question then. What is the difference between the criteria for getting up at the beginning of the period and addressing an agenda item and coming up here at the end? I know it has to relate to school issues before and after, but I'm studying the policies and I'm just not sure that there is a difference. If there is, I'd like to hear that because I can't get it read, or I can't read that in your school policy.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Beisel made the motion, and Ms. Rhodes seconds. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, folks.